Welcome. I am Jason Morano. I am one of the senior security solutions consultants with Quest Software. And in this Security Guardian on-demand video, we are going to be covering the most exciting part of this solution, settings. So you can see I was at the dashboard. So for anybody using the solution, on demand is going to have this left side panel, and you're going to be able to go to security. And then I'm going to come over here and go to settings. So we're going to cover all of these. Under forwarding, you have three options. So for everybody saying, well, how do I get those ever important emails sending me all the alerts that I need to follow up on or clean up my hygiene around Active Directory or Entra? This is where you're going to do it. So the first thing you're going to see here for customers that are using Microsoft Sentinel, you're going to be able to put in your workspace ID and your shared key and then send your events directly to it. Now, when it gets these events, this is the big question, what events is it getting? It's getting all of the findings that have run through their normal schedule and have come back into the solution. So it's not that many in generalized terms. It's not feeding raw data directly into Sentinel or Splunk for that matter. And while we're here, we might as well go over to Splunk. And you'll see we have handy dandy links in here showing you where you find the HTTP event collector URL and put in the token. So all of this should be through those vendor sites, Microsoft as well as Splunk's. And then the bigger one that everybody definitely wants to use, even if they have a SIM solution listed here that they're using, is sending out email alerts to possibly a queue within some help desk queue that your security team, administration team, or both is responding to. And then all you have to do is put in the email address of where you want it to go. So if I was sending it to myself, I would send it to this address, and I can continue adding recipients. Then I can also come in, and if I needed to, I could select recipients from the organization. So I could decide if I wanted more, I can add more, and then also put in whatever it is. In this case, I put my personal email address. If it's just a queue you're sending it to respond and close out tickets, you can just put that. All right, I think this is pretty much self-explanatory in terms of questions people would have here. The next is going to be all indicators. So what are the indicators? They're the actual security events, whether hygiene or actual TTPs or whatever it is that you're getting in from your change auditor, as well as in the audit section or any of the Security Guardian findings, you will see a list of all indicators. This indicator list will grow based on all kinds of events that we end up adding in, we being Quest Software, over time. So I'm going to take a moment here. You can filter these events. And there's something I want to point out. There is always user guide help through here. So I get people that ask all the time, what's the difference between a critical or high event? You can click on this. I've already done it. And we can come right here in the user guide, and it will explain why we rate something critical. This is not just some subjective criticality listing. This is based on what we're finding and how severe could it be based on the object that it's affecting. If it's critical, it's generally a hygiene or a detected indicator, some type of threat that we're seeing to a tier 0 or a privileged object account within Active Directory. And it has the high impact that if that is going on, there could be actual trouble within your organization. So it's definitely something you want to clean up if it's a hygiene event. And if it's something coming in that's actually a TTP or some type of threat, if it's critical, it's because it's affecting a tier 0 object. And we can do the same for high. High is generally reserved for hygiene and detected indicators that are high concerns, but impact possibly just single objects, as well as the discovery of new tier 0 objects and privileged tenant objects being found. That's up in Entra. And changes to tier 0 and privileged objects that occur more often through normal business operations as a part of default Active Directory or Entra configurations. And then general medium are for tier 0 users, computers, and groups, and group policy objects, privileged users, role group, and service principal objects. So we go ahead and explain that here. The next thing we're going to look at, so I can sort, so we have filters, and I could say, you know, an indicator or severity in this case is high, medium, low, critical. And this will automatically filter this. There's nothing I have to click on. It will filter it, and it's now all critical. Now, you're going to see up here, the next thing. I wouldn't mute something like Active Directory database attempt, but it's a good example. So let's talk about the ability to filter on mute status. So if I come here, I could say muted or unmuted. What does this mean? Well, let's go back to the handy dandy user guide, and you will see in the next section here, we actually talk about muting and unmuting indicators, so you do not get alerted on these. This is really kind of extreme in my opinion. I wouldn't mute something here, especially if its criticality is quite high, but I do understand the need, if there is something that you just can't address right then, to not continuously be alerted on it, though the argument can be made that you should always be alerted on it. But we give customers the ability to mute. And so you could see I'm filtering on muted. And if I wanted to change the status, I have a couple of different ways. I could click on it and then unmute it. I can also click on the link here and you can see unmute indicator. So it doesn't matter which one I pick. You have a couple of different ways of doing that. And this will take a second as it unmutes it. And now I shouldn't have any muted anymore. So I should be able to filter on muted versus unmuted and not see any muted. And the same goes for the rest of the filters here. Just really helps you narrow down what it is that you're trying to find. Now, if I go back to muted, it should be updated and nothing in here. So let's see, workload types. So I might want to select Active Directory versus Entra. So I might want to filter those out and say, I just want to look at Entra ID type workload events. So this is really helpful for at least splitting between the two and making sure I'm not seeing stuff that affects on-prem Active Directory versus Entra. And this will go through this based on the amount of objects. And then if I need to, I can always add in more, right? So I could say severity now, I just want to see stuff that is critical. And once I hit that, it'll filter it out. And now I have three criticalities. So filter should be pretty easy. To clear them all is just that, clear all, and it will clear them. You'll also see that we have the ability to look at the filters listed here and sort the filter list. Last thing, let's go over to data collections. Now, generally, you don't need to manually run a data collection. When you connect Entra for the first time or Active Directory for the first time, it's always going to run a default scan. So it will, in the background, do that. However, I can understand if somebody moved their instance of Change Auditor to a newer server, or something has happened where I need to connect and reconnect or rescan, or I made a change. I fixed something in Active Directory. I fixed several things during a change night, and I want to kick off a collection. Basically tell the hybrid collector on-prem to do its scan through the tier 0 objects and come back with a reassessment of what it's finding. The same would go for Entra. You can run one or the other. You cannot pick both, and you can enable or disable based on the options. So if I hit disable, it's going to disable my Active Directory scans. You have the flexibility to make these choices. What you will see over here, once again, a pop-up little info circles here. If for some reason I am wanting to do a manual collection, you get up to 24 within a 24-hour interval. Okay. So once I say, yeah, you know what, connect to Active Directory and run a collection manually, it's going to decrement it by 1, and I will be down to 23 more times. It's just so that you're not overloading the SaaS-based environment with collections. There's also no reason to continuously run these scans within your environment, but we do recognize the fact that you might want to force a data collection, and we have given you that option here. This concludes this part of the recording. And I'd like to thank you for continuing with the onboarding education process for Security Guardian. Thank you.